Welcome back, members. In this video we're going to make a wire bracelet using 3Shaper and 3Design. Alright, so we're going to start this project right in 3Shaper. So go ahead and click on Modeling in the toolkit. And the first thing we're going to do is set up a cube or a box in the Create 3D Shapes. Okay, and we're going to set this to stay right in the center, and for the length, width, and height we're going to do 1 millimeter with one subdivision on each side. So leave those 1, 1, 1 or change them if they're not already. Okay, there's no validate button, so let's just go ahead and jump to our edit tool. That's the very first selection tool. And we're going to work in box mode for this next set. It's going to make it easier to see the edges that we're creating. We need to subdivide this so that we don't have just a round box. We have some actual filleted edges on there. So to do that, we're going to go to edge mode. And we're going to select an edge on the corner here, this side. And we'll do a edge ring. That's going to select the edges all the way around the box. And then we'll do a split and pull. Okay, we want to set this up right over to the side of the box. It's about 2 notches on your split position. And validate. Okay, reselect that same edge on this side of the split. And do another edge ring. And then another split and pull. Okay, we want the same split on the opposite side, so hit symmetrical position and validate. Okay, we're just going to repeat those steps for the other directions around the box. So we'll grab that edge and another edge ring, split and pull. Notice that it keeps the position, so we can go ahead and validate. Reselect that edge ring, split and pull. Okay. Sometimes it'll choose the symmetrical position. If it doesn't, just remember you can reverse it with the symmetrical position button. Validate. Okay, and then we have the edge on the front corner as well. Edge ring, split and pull, validate, reselect, edge ring, split and pull. This time it didn't choose the symmetrical position, so we'll click the symmetrical position button and validate. So that splits all of our edges all the way around the box so that we have these nice corners. When you go back to soft mode, we see we have an actual box with nice subdivisions. So the reason we did that instead of just filleting or pre-subdividing this box is we have this nice square shape here. This is where we're going to bridge the boxes together. So this is exactly the subdivisions that we want. So we did it manually. Okay, so I'm going to switch to a top view, and we're going to go to face mode and select the entire box. And I want to move it. And I need to move it a specific amount. So instead of just dragging the transform gizmo, we're going to hit this little ruler. And by default it moves at 10 on the X, so you see the box is 10 millimeters over here. We actually want to move it 0 on the X, 1.5 millimeters on the Y. So we're moving it up 1.5 millimeters in that direction. Okay. Next we need to rotate the box. So we're going to click on rotate, no validate button, just jump right into the rotate. And again, I have a specific amount in mind, so we'll use the ruler. And by default, it's going around the OY axis. That's the green axis. We need to go around the blue axis or the Z axis. So select the hand, go to your tree, axes and planes, click on the OZ. You should see a nice indicator here of which direction you're spinning it. So this looks correct. And we're going to do 45 degrees. So we can angle the box perfectly. Okay. Go back to your edit tool. You can also hit escape anytime you want to jump right to that edit tool and get out of another tool. So go back to our angled view here. And next thing we want to do is we want to create the other 3 boxes for our design. So we're going to go ahead and exit 3Shaper to the history tools. So hit the exit button 1 time. And we're just going to set up a circular duplication. That's in your symmetry tools. And the default is 10. We're going to change that to 4. So we have 4 copies around a circle just like that. Go ahead and validate that. Okay, anytime you use a history tool, either your construction or symmetry history tools, you have a choice of either modeling before the history takes place or after. In this case, we want to connect these boxes together. So we want to go ahead and if we look at our tree here, click on circular duplication and then reach modeling tools. So now they're going to be 4 separate objects. So this is taking place after the history. Next, we want to select the opposing faces between the boxes and do a bridge. It's in the shaping section, bridge. Okay. So that gives us a non-subdivided bridge. We want to add a few subdivisions in there so we can keep that shape more precise. I'm going to do 4 is plenty. And then just repeat that step for the rest of the connections that you want to make. It keeps the 4 in there so we don't have to change that again. And so on. Okay, so there's our center part of our link for our bracelet. Okay, so next we want to set up a curve so that we can sweep, not really sweep, but bridge along that curve to create the rest of our link. So I'm going to go ahead and exit all the way out of 3Shaper. So hit the exit button twice and we're back in 3Design. And in the top view, or the OXY, we're going to sketch. That's the default plane. So we're sketching from the top. Okay. And we need to create our curve. I'm going to use a symmetrical horizontal curve. And I'm going to make that open by unchecking the close curve box. And right about here in the middle of that face of that box, we're going to start our curve. And we only need 2 clicks to make that little loop shape. Go ahead and validate, it'll snap back. So that's the shape we want. Okay. Now we need to probably size this. We already know the rough size of our centerpiece, but we want to make sure our link is the correct width for our bracelet. And what I want to align that to is the stone we're going to use. So let's go ahead and create that stone now so we have a visual guide to edit this curve. So I'm going to exit the sketch, and in that same plane we're going to switch to the jeweler's bench and create our stone. Okay, so we're going to use the shape oval, and we're going to make it 7 by 5. So uncheck the keep ratio to change those numbers independently. Okay, and then we're going to switch to the second tab, the cut parameters, and we'll change that to a cabochon. And we'll choose a material by clicking the hand. And I'm going to use ornamental stones, and probably let's do a star sapphire. That'll be fun. You can use any color you want, of course. Go ahead and validate that. Okay, so now that we have that, we can see if our curve is properly sized. It looks a little big. So I'm going to double click back in there and just adjust this point. And just kind of using my grid as a guide, we want it slightly larger than the stone. So something like that. We can always adjust that. Go ahead and validate that. Exit out of the sketch mode. We need the other side for the other side's bridge, so we'll just mirror this one. So select that curve, switch back to the create solids, and duplicate mirror. Okay, that'll keep it parametric, so if you do decide you want to mess with this shape, the shape will update automatically. Okay, so we're ready to go back to 3Shaper and do the bridging. So to do that, we want to find our modeling in the tree and double click the last edit surface, so edit surface 2. Okay, so that'll bring us right back to editing that surface. And we need to set up for parametric or history bridging, we need to mark these surfaces. And to do that, I'm going to select, oops, my stone is in the way. It's okay, we'll go ahead and hide that stone for now. We'll come back to it later. There we go. Now I can see. So we're going to color code these two surfaces that go along with this curve by highlighting them and then right clicking and click add color. So choose a color, red is fine, validate. Now when we unselect, we can see that we've color coded those two surfaces red. We'll do the other side, add color, and we'll pick a different color. So now we have two color codes for those surfaces. So now we're ready to add our parametric bridge. So instead of jumping right into a bridge here in the shaping section, we're going to exit the shaper, go to Reach History Tools, and we're going to do our bridge with the parametric construction tool. So click on bridge, and by default it's going to bridge by color. We have the white, red, and the green. We're going to start with the red, and we're going to change the bridge mode to a long curve. That's the fourth option, and then choose that curve. You should see a little preview line. It needs more subdivisions to keep the shape more accurate, so I'm going to put about 20. Again, we can adjust that later if needed. And when we validate, we get that nice bridge along that curve between those two red surfaces. So we're just going to repeat that step for the other side. So do another bridge. This time the red's already been used, so it's going to jump right to the green. Along the curve, use the hand to select the curve. And change your number of subdivisions. Okay. You can preview that if needed. When we validate, we have our second bridge. Okay, so there is our link ready to go. Now we need to bend this into the shape of our bracelet. We could do that in Shaper, but that's a lot of moving points and getting it all aligned. The nice thing about Shaper objects is they deform really well in 3Design. So we're going to go ahead and exit one more time back to 3Design. And before we set that up, we want to go ahead and give us a guide curve for our bracelet. I'm going to select the front view plane, or the OXZ, new sketch, and I'm just going to draw a circle, regular circle from the center. And then selecting that circle, we can change the diameter. I'm going to use 65 millimeters. That's a nice 8-inch bracelet. That's kind of an average size. If you're making different size bracelets, obviously you'll want to calculate that diameter. You can use the web for, look that up in Google and find all kinds of charts and different sizes. So we'll start with an average size, 65 millimeters. So go ahead and validate that. And now that we have our guide, we can go ahead and move our first link into position. So select the link, click on Move, Rotate, Scale. And then from a front view, we're just going to place it right outside our circle. Something like that. Validate. And now we can bend it to that shape. Select it again. The deform section, we're going to use a symmetrical bend, so we can bend it down the middle. And the face that we want to bend along is this red arrow here on the bottom. Once you select that, then you can go ahead and grab the handle and bend it. Okay. If we zoom in there, we can get that pretty accurate. I like to use my mouse wheel inside the box here, and you can kind of move it 1/10 of a degree at a time. So you can get that nice and accurate. So go ahead and validate that deform. It's a shaper object, so it deforms really quickly. And now we can go back into Shaper with our new object here and make some changes to it. So instead of editing our original model here, we're going to turn this double bin into a new model. So select it and then click the modeling button from the toolkit again. Okay, so this is going to convert it back into a shaper model. Nice thing is it has all the subdivisions from the original shaper model. So the accuracy doesn't need to be changed. We go ahead and validate. All right. Now before we add any other history tools to this, we need a new edit surface on this model. So go ahead and click Reach Modeling Tools. Anytime you click this button, it's going to add a new edit surface. Okay. We don't need to change anything right now. We just need to add that edit surface. Go ahead and back out again so we can add our symmetry. So if we look at our history here, we now have edit surface 3 on top of the imported model. Important step if you're going to be adding history, you need at least one edit surface below it first. So we'll go ahead and add our symmetry to the model, which is going to be a circular duplication again. Okay. And instead of around the OZ, we're going to go to our tree and axes and planes, and this is going to be around the OY. Okay, so it's going to repeat it around the Y-axis. We're going to change the number of copies. And I think 11 here looks good. You may have a different number depending on the size of your stone and the shape of your link. But we want a nice oval shape where they overlap, just like that. So that looks good. Go ahead and validate that. Okay, so this time we want to edit the first link and it'll update the duplicated copies. So instead of clicking the Reach Modeling Tools, which is going to add a new edit surface, we're going to go back to the history, model number 2, circular duplication number 2, expand that, and we're going to double click to edit surface number 3. So double click that, and you'll notice when I select parts of this one, it selects all of them around. So the only one we're going to work on is the original model. So I'm going to go to the left side of the link, and we want to kind of make this weave in and out from the other links. So we're going to go ahead and go to edge mode, and I'm going to select the edge closest to the overlap and do an edge loop. That'll select the entire loop around the object. And then just using my move tool, we're going to move this just below the surface of the other one. And that's it. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. So select that edge closest to the overlap, do another edge loop, and then back in the move tool. And this one I'm going to move up instead of down. So just like that. So we get this nice crisscross between them. You notice because of our symmetry or our duplication, the same thing happens on the next link and so on. So we just have to do the one side. Okay. So that's it for our shaping of the model. It's all complete. Now we just need to add the details, the stone and the setting. Let's go ahead and exit out of Shaper. And one more time will bring us back to 3Design. Okay. You'll notice whenever you have multiple copies of Shaper objects, when you get to 3Design, it's not a complete solid object yet. It is a group. So you can see the little white bounding boxes when you hover over it. So we'll take care of that with a Boolean in a little bit. First, we need to go ahead and set up our stone. So let's go ahead and show that stone we hid earlier. And then we need to rotate this, because right now, if we look at the very top, our stone is right in the little box section of our link. So we're going to select that group and add a move rotate scale to it. Change to rotate mode, and using the green here, we're going to rotate it so that the link is right in the middle, or the oval shape. Okay. You may have to adjust it just a little bit depending on the number of copies you have. We could do the math, divide this by pi and multiply it by the number and so on. I just like to do it visually. We can get it pretty darn close. That's all that's important. And go ahead and validate that. Okay, now we can move our stone into position. Just double click back into that stone And in the first tab, we have our move gizmo. We can go ahead and move it on top of our bracelet. Might help to go to a front view so we can align it properly. It should be just sitting right inside that little oval. Just like that. Okay, go ahead and validate that change. Okay, so we got our first stone all set up. We'll make copies here in a minute. Let's go ahead and set up our claws. Go back to the jeweler's bench, select the stone, and we're going to click on claws. That's going to go ahead and automatically create the claws to the stone. So we don't need to change anything in the belts tab because we're not linking it to any belts, just to the stone. Go ahead and click on claws. And we have the 5 tabs to change the parameters. We'll start with this section. And I'm going to make this, 0.6 sounds good for this size stone. We're going to do double claw, so that should be plenty once we double them up. We do want to round the tip if you want to not have those flat ends on the end. Okay, next we'll go to the height tab. That's the first tab. And we'll shrink these down a little bit. They're a little tall. So just enough for the setter to have room to work with, but not so he has to cut too much off of there. The second tab is the offset, so we may want to angle these a bit. Right now they are sticking out a little bit too much in the bottom, but not enough at the top, so we'll go ahead and adjust those 2 offsets so that they kind of angle out around the stone. You want to leave a little overlap so that the setter can cut into that. And then finally the position. Okay, since I'm going to do double claws on the corners, I think that first position looks fine. We'll leave that there. So to create the second set of claws, instead of validating and then redoing that and trying to remember all those steps, you can add more claws in the claw list. So just hit the plus. It's going to add a second set of claws, and it's going to copy all those settings that we just set up for the first set. So now we just need to position. So we're just going to move that over here. So that it overlaps our other claw just a little bit, so we have this nice double claw setting. That's it for our claws. Go ahead and validate that. And now we just need to repeat this and then put it all together. So let's go ahead and select our stone and the group of claws. There we go. And we'll go back to the solid module. Circular duplication. Again, we're going to go around the Y instead of the Z, so select the hand and choose the Y axis, and the number of copies will be the same as the number of links. So we had 11 links, 11 copies of the stones. They should all align properly. Validate that. Now, because we copied the stone and the claws together, you'll notice that those are grouped together. We need to ungroup those. So instead of just ungrouping them all into individual pieces, if we go to the group section, filter by, and the filter by type or material, either will work because they're both different. Go ahead and hit OK, and that will separate the stones from the claws. Okay, so now we're ready to put it all together. Let's start by boolean our links together. I'm going to go ahead and do a save as at this point, if you haven't already. And we'll call this shaper bracelet number 1. Okay, so we're going to get ready to do a heavy boolean. Always a good idea to save just in case. Go ahead and select that group of links and do a boolean add. Validate that. Like I said, it's a heavy operation. Give it a minute to calculate all that. All right, so it takes a little time, but because these are, we took the time to overlap these a little bit, we don't have those intersecting edges. It should boolean together nicely. We have a nice solid bracelet now. We just need to add our claws and we're all finished. So do another save. Okay, file's getting pretty heavy, so go ahead and select the bracelet and the claws and we'll do our final boolean add, validate. And again, give that a few seconds to calculate. So there we go. We have our completely solid bracelet and the stones. Take a few seconds to hide our curves and our axes and planes. We're all set. Well, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next members video.